You might be wondering how to let go of shame and regret. Look, we got you, so keep watching. In this video, we're gonna tell you what shame and regret really are. And then we'll talk about why you feel them so often and why you struggle to let them go. And finally, we'll tell you how to stop feeling shame and regret. All right, guilt and shame. Some of the hardest emotions to deal with, aren't they? I mean, they really are. A lot of people struggle with them for a lot of different reasons.
You might be a mom who feels guilty at just the thought of taking a little time for yourself and be ashamed of yourself, how you look, or how many times you've gained weight after losing it.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons you might feel guilt and shame. I mean, here are just a few. It could be that you did something that you're not proud of or you didn't want to do. It could be that you think you let yourself down in some way.
It could be you aren't being true to yourself and part of you knows it.
Yeah, guilt and shame are just really common reactions when you really care about doing something right and you feel like you just failed at it.
Other people can also be involved in guilt and shame. Maybe you hurt someone, even accidentally, and maybe somebody made fun of you or said something that really hurt your feelings.
Yeah. Maybe you didn't do what someone else wanted to do and they got mad at you or they acted disappointed in you. That's pretty common.
It could be that someone did something horrible to you and you think it's because you must have deserved it.
People really think this?
That's awful.
That's awful. And sometimes other people use guilt and shame on you to try to get what they want or because they're really just unhappy. They don't know how else to handle their own misery.
We used to make a joke about someone who always did this. We would say, "Get on board the guilt bus. Here we go. Meet me."
Oh, that's funny.
So whatever the exact cause of your guilt and shame, here is what you can do to understand why you are feeling it.
All right, old school. You guys ready to go old school? Get out a pen and paper and write down the last time you felt guilty or ashamed.
What happened right before you felt that way? What happened during? And what happened afterwards?
So writing down exactly what happened will get the information out of your head and right there in front of you.
And now you can see what triggered the guilt and the shame. And I want you to start asking yourself why. Kind of like a curious little kid.
Yeah. When you answer that question, why, then ask yourself why again. And then ask yourself again and again and again. I'm gonna keep asking why, because it's important to really go deep here. It's important that you get to the real reason and then shine a light on that reason.
And the reason we tell you to keep asking why is because the truth is it's not often what you initially thought it was. This is probably going to shock you what you find out. And it won't be what you expect, and that's okay. That's really the point.
Yeah, that's really the point of this whole thing. All right, now that you see what's going on with the guilt and shame that you're feeling, here's how to start making it stop. All right, number one, examine the beliefs you have and ask yourself, are they facts or are they just stories?
Oh my, that's a really good one. For example, let's say you've realized you feel guilty, wanting a little more time to yourself instead of doing everything for everyone else. And let's say the deep, raw why, like after you ask yourself the why over and over, is because your parents told you that you had to give to others and it was selfish and made you feel like a bad person to ever put yourself first.
Is that a provable fact? That putting yourself first automatically makes you a bad person? Or is that just a story that you tell yourself based on what your parents drilled into you about what they believe?
We become the stories we tell ourselves. Oh, how true. And if you're feeling a lot of guilt and shame, it's because you're telling yourself stories that make you feel those things.
So change your stories and you will, with practice, change how you feel. Before we go to our next point, we want to hear from you. If you're feeling brave, you're feeling vulnerable, listen, I love when you open yourself up to me. So comment below and tell me, are you having a hard time moving on from guilt and shame? Is this something you battle with? Comment below.
Here is an unpopular view on guilt and shame that some of you are not going to like, and it might rattle a few cages, is that the longer you live in this area, in this space of guilt and shame, and I'm not trying to make you feel shameful or guilty by telling you this, but the longer you live in this space, the more comfortable you become with those feelings, and the more they kind of become your friends, and they become something you kind of like to have around. And when you don't have them around, maybe you don't feel significant, and it leads very quickly to a martyr syndrome. Well, the guilt and the shame, and then it just kind of goes right into martyrdom, where nobody understands what I do. Nobody gets, I feel guilty. It's almost like you feel, and I have been there, is that you feel like you have to live in guilt and shame in order to feel justified for what is happening in your life or what you're going through. And I've noticed with a lot of people, it kind of becomes a coat that you put on and you rub, and it's comfortable, and they like living with these feelings because they're so used to it. Now, that is not true of the guilt you feel like when something happens to your child or, a divorce. That is why it is so important to immediately recognize your piece of the guilt process, maybe the mistakes you made, but don't let yourself be in that space too long, because Cristy, it will absolutely make you way too comfortable with those feelings to where you become justified being a martyr. I've seen it happen over and over.
I'll tell you, I'll share something personal with you guys. Buckle up, here I go.
Here we go.
The way that we were raised very strict religious household, and I won't get in. Nothing against our parents. I mean, they did the best they could with where and we turned out to be good kids. And so, but I thought that the only way to that the only option I had was to get married, and that I just automatically assumed that every man I would ever be with would be as great as our own dad, and so I just got married to just. Not all of them were rotten people. I mean, one of them was good, but the other guys were awful. And I had such guilt and shame associated with multiple failed marriages. And and so you really have to get past that. Finally, I met Miles. That guy's not getting away from me for nothing. He's going to have to die before I ever,
He's getting away in a casket.
He's getting away in a casket, exactly. Because we are sticking it out to the end. But I finally was able to get a good one, or at least make this marriage work. And there is so much shame. Even sometimes I think about, I thought, oh, Cristy, you idiot. Why did you do that? But, it doesn't help to beat yourself up.
And people put their expectations on you, too, and that can make it worse, because I was somewhere and someone found out that I had been married before, and he was like, oh, and he looked at me very judgmentally, And I was like, well, not everyone's had a perfect life. And I take responsibility for my actions, and I take responsibility for the mistakes I've made, but I'm not going to allow myself to get so stuck in that guilt and shame, which is what a lot of people do, that you turn around and make another bad decision, maybe pick another wrong person, another wrong partner, and also you don't move forward, and it becomes your life story. Let me tell you something. Cristy's life story is not about the marriages. It's not about that. It's about the awesome work that she's done and how much she's grown from that. She does not let the guilt and the shame that society and herself and the religious beliefs and all these other things try to put on her hold her back. Her story is not that. My story is not that. So you can make guilt and shame your story, or you can turn and go a different way.
I love that. Another way to stop the guilt and shame comes down to one word, and that is forgiveness. I mean, you're not perfect. We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I mess up and say all wrong things all the time. I mean, we all do.
Beating yourself up with guilt and shame truly changes nothing. It does nothing to make you feel better, and all it does is make you feel like crap all the time.
And we're not telling you to just shut off your emotions and your ability to feel compassion. No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is forgiving yourself for being a human being and doing the best you can with where you were. Well, you know what? That goes a long way.
Well, finally, you can stop the guilt and shame by doing something good for you, something that you can be proud of.
That's what we do. We help our clients in our nutrition program, the Code Red Lifestyle. People come to us because they're ashamed that they let themselves go, or they are really ashamed when they gain their weight back. That's for sure.
And Cristy teaches them how to lose weight and feel better with real food, water, and sleep. And they feel so good physically, but also they feel good about themselves. It's about so much more than weight loss. How many times have we said this, Cristy? It's about taking your life back, including from all getting away from all the guilt and shame.
Yeah,
as
totally.
well.
And that's why we have the shirt, Taking Your Life Back. Here, step this way a little bit. Step forward, step forward. Take your life back. That's what it says. And that's what our motto is. And I'm wearing the same shirt, and this is the front. We offer these on our website. I've got it linked up below. They're buttery soft. They run a little bit big, so keep that in mind when you go to order yours. We do them in long sleeve or short sleeve. And that's our motto. That's the Code Red motto underneath the logo. It says, Code Red, take your life back. And that's what happens when people come to us and they get delivered from all this guilt and shame. So if you'd like to take your life back, well, get started by downloading the Code Red private network, which you can get in the App Store, Google Play Store, or going to CodeRedLifestyle.com.
You will get food ideas, support, programs, and tons more. Remember, you really do deserve to be free of guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Show yourself some grace, just like you would do for a loved one.
And we'll see you on the next video. Sometimes other people use guilt and shame on you to try to get you to
We've been down to the
So
bottom.
if you have a story that you need to change about yourself, either one of you.
Yeah.
Stories you
Okay.
got 'em.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, mine works. I'm sorry.
Well, I can bring up something that,
I have an idea too about guilt and shame.
about marriage.
No.
Okay.
Jizz.
Marriages.
Jizz.
I mess up and say all wrong things all the time. I mean, we all do.
Wait a minute. Do you mean the ex-husband too? Sorry. Bad joke.